Well, good afternoon. My name is Daryl O'Sullivan, and I'm on the board of directors of the Western Neuropathy Association. It is my pleasure to host or to MC the March webinar. This month's webinar is on neuropathy and mental health, a patient's perspective. Mental health challenges often come along with a neuropathy diagnosis. Shana Phelps, one of our new directors of Western Neuropathy Association, and a person with neuropathy, found this out firsthand. In this webinar, Shana will share a bit of her story and the tools she used to cope through her diagnosis and treatment. Now, remember, the presentation will follow with questions and answers, so please hold your questions till you can put them in, but we won't actually answer them until the end. And of course, the webinar will be recorded for later putting onto the YouTube channel that you'll be able to visit and review at your pleasure in the future. So without any further ado, I think I will let Shana take over and welcome and be my guest.
Thank you, Daryl. Neuropathy completely changed my life, and I'm the better for it. Hi, my name is Shana Phelps, and I have neuropathy. My neuropathies are primarily affect my sensory, autonomic, and cranial nerves, and are derived from a multitude of causes, primarily autoimmune and genetic. Neuropathy, a disease which causes pain, numbness, and a variety of odd sensations, made your life better? Initially, no. I had a very rough time adjusting. Most of my neuropathy symptoms were mild at first. A stumble here, dropping something there, feeling raindrops when it wasn't raining, feeling small pinches. I passed them off as anything but what they were. I wasn't paying attention to where my feet were going. I was distracted. I didn't realize my sense of balance and position in the world, also known as proprioception, was completely out of whack. It was so bad there was even a joke in high school that the wind blew and pushed me over. It took having an unresolved injury to my ankle for me to see my doctor, who started working me up for neuropathy. There's no way this is neuropathy, I thought. Everything can simply be explained. I thought my excuses were the same as explanations. Many people with autoimmune caused neuropathies or CIDP have an accelerated onset, so I didn't get much time to deny the test results, as my neuropathies progressed very rapidly. See, I got the flu in February of 2020. At that time, I was doing 1 or 2 5-mile hikes on the weekends, 2 or 3 kickboxing classes during the week, and working a fast-paced, on-your-feet job. By October of 2020, I needed a walker and assistance to take the 20 steps or so from the bed to the bathroom. Neuropathy affects 1 in 15 people and is very common in a multitude of conditions I have, yet I had never heard of it. I was pissed. My doctors didn't give enough information or had no information in some cases, and the treatments they were offering were few or far between. Why hadn't I heard of neuropathy before? What if I could prevented it getting this bad? My family didn't understand. My friends slowly stopped inviting me and stopped talking to me. I had lost my independence in many ways. I had to depend on people for help now. I couldn't even enjoy my hobbies in the same way as I had before. Why was I being punished and cast out when they weren't the ones struggling with this? I was struggling to find purpose in my life. I was desperately craving connection and sameness. I had a family member say she wasn't okay with me using my cane. I considered not using it if it meant she'd accept me. I was willing to risk my safety and put myself into pain just for the sake of sameness. I would have done anything to keep my hobbies as they were unchanged. Someone so can walk around the mall and they have so many issues. I should be able to do that too. I started to realize that I was having a crisis of self. I was comparing myself to others, bargaining on the very pillars of myself, my core values, and my boundaries. What are boundaries and core values? Boundaries are rules we hold with ourselves that dictate how we act and how we react based around our core values. Boundaries are not something that can be forced on the other person in the relationship. An example of one of my boundaries is I will continue to remain respectful. If I am no longer respectful, I need to compose myself, take accountability, and apologize and work to ensure this doesn't happen again. If the other person or people are no longer respectful, I will politely ask them to be respectful. If this is not done, I will not continue to engage any further and I will respectfully leave that situation. Now, notice the language that I'm using in this boundary. It's everything that I will do or react with. and does not require the other person to act or react in any way. Reading that definition again, boundaries are the rules we hold with ourselves that dictate how we act and how we react based on our core values. Speaking of language, there was a crucial part of the definition of boundaries that I was missing at this point: core values. I hadn't heard of core values before therapy, just prior to my more severe neuropathy onset. Core values are the fundamental beliefs and principles and ideals that guide actions, the decision making process, and overall behavior. They shape the way we view ourselves and the world around us. My therapist at the time suggested I figure out my core values, and it felt like someone splashed cold water on my face when he said that the core values I gave him weren't my core values. Except he was right. I put down what I thought sounded good, but I had never deeply considered what I truly wanted. So here are some examples of values. And I'm curious, what are the first two values that really stand out to you? And think about that for a moment. Why did those particular values stand out to you? As an example, maybe patriotism stands out to you because your family served in the armed forces, and every 4th of July, the entire family would come together and celebrate. Identifying my core values took help, especially finding what my actual core values were, not just what I thought sounded good. So here's what my therapist had me do. He said, write a list of values that are important to you specifically. And obviously, that first time I struggled. So, to help you guys out, here's some considerations. Why are these important to me? Consider where the source of your appraisal of a value lies. I value bravery, especially perseverance and vulnerability. I've seen people who I already considered strong talk about depression that was causing them to struggle and how they fought through it to keep going to therapy, keep taking their meds, and keep asking for help. I've seen people who didn't stop loving life because they adapted to their ailments and found ways to keep on going. Does this value bring me peace, joy, or clarity? Values that bring you unease, discomfort, or upset the natural balance of your life likely aren't core values to you. Consider, do these values bring you peace, joy, or clarity, regardless of if other people or your current situation is involved? I was uneasy about holding boundaries for a long time and it made me uncomfortable. But I realized dealing with a little bit of discomfort to set and hold the boundary was better than the discomfort and emotional pain of people breaking my boundaries over and over again. And finally, is this a value for me or because I was told it matters? For example, I was told to value perfection in every area and to strive for perfection through practice, except I was a clumsy person before my neuropathy got bad. So mistakes would happen often, and that's okay. Mistakes are okay. It just means that perfection isn't something that I value despite being told perfection matters. You're going to take your list and try to pare it down. So, for example, I value kindness, boundary setting, and working for the greater good of the general welfare. However, all of those fit under my value of respect. You can see a list of my values and more examples here on the right side of the screen. You're going to keep paring your list down until ideally you have about 3 to 5 strong core values. And it takes a lot of time to ponder and consider this and really, figure out what actually matters to you. For me, it took about 3 weeks. If you recall from earlier, boundaries are rules that we hold with ourselves that dictate how we act, how we react based around our core values. Now that I had my core values, I could set some boundaries. First, consider your prompting event. This could be a place, event, situation, and/or person or people that may require you to set a boundary. My example is I'm going out with my friends. Now we know the setting of the boundary. What's the boundary itself? For going out with my friends, my boundary is I need to bring my mobility aid. And I've listed a why here. The reason I listed a why is to remember to take the time and consider, why do you need this boundary? Why is that boundary important to you? For using my mobility aid when going out with friends, for me, it's my safety. Much like a pros and cons chart, I put the effects, and one of those possible effects is I go out with my friends and bring my mobility aid. No problems, real easy, great, the best of the best. Another possible effect is for some reason, I can't bring my mobility aid. This could be the activity is inaccessible, or someone makes me uncomfortable about using my mobility aid, or anything else in between. And if that happens, I can let my friends know, hey, I need my mobility aid for my safety, which is important to me. If accommodating my mobility aid continues to be an issue, then I will need to stop going out and may need to evaluate my relationships with those friends. Because again, back to that core value of safety, that is important to me more than risking it for friends. And setting boundaries it felt pretty isolating for a while. I felt like I was losing connections to everything. I felt like I was losing people because many of them couldn't understand or respect my boundaries. So I had to leave those relationships behind. I was avoiding hobbies because they were far too difficult to try to do the same way that I had always done them. And I wasn't ready to try something new. I had so many things I felt like I couldn't do and felt so sad. I sometimes felt nothing at all. I started reaching out. I was searching for a connection and found neuropathy support groups, and suddenly I wasn't alone anymore. Neuropathy taught me to find support and strength, and I learned coping strategies that were effective for me, but I could not do that alone, and it definitely took me a team of support. My team consisted of my primary care physician, a bunch of specialties who helped me with treat my neuropathy, my close friends and family, and most importantly for me, mental health therapy and support groups. There are a lot of different types of therapy out there for mental health. For me personally, I primarily had behavior therapy, also known as DBT, and cognitive behavior therapy, also known as CBT, which are both forms of talk therapy. Talk therapy can be attended in person, via a video call, much like Zoom, or via a phone call, even. Personally, I go to therapy to practice coping skills, process and vent with my therapist, and ask for help with problem solving. This can include things like, hey, I can't figure out how to talk to the insurance company again. How can I have some strategies to not get so frustrated with them when they're on the phone and they don't understand what I'm talking about? Or even things like, hey, my friends don't understand that I need my mobility aid. What can I do here? Uh, I had learned about radical acceptance in therapy. Radical acceptance is completely and totally accepting with our mind, body, and spirit that we cannot currently change the present facts, even if we do not like them, and instead focusing on what we can control. There are many parts of having neuropathy I dislike. Slowing down and conserving energy being two major parts I dislike. I can focus on how much it sucks, or I can say, I might have to go slower for my own safety, but it means I get to people and birdwatch more. Or I can point out how many friends I feel like I don't have, or I can say I focused on my real friends. I found the people who, even though there's not a lot of them, the quality of their friendship is undeniable. I can focus on how others have it worse or better than me, or I can focus on how I made small improvements in my lifestyle. I could have given up at any time. Instead, I started working out. When my other conditions caused too much atrophy for weightlifting, I kept moving and doing body weight exercises and walks. When walking and standing became too much because of my autonomic neuropathy, primarily on the bad days, I got a wheelchair so I could be more independent and enjoy life on bad days. Sometimes I'm still upset and grieving, and I allow myself to feel my emotions for a little bit. When that bit of time is over, I remember the facts of the present, what I have control over, and figure out the path onward. I keep cycling through these stages of grief in no particular order, slowly making my way back to this acceptance stage. Just like the treatments for neuropathy, I have to regularly use my coping skills for them to be effective, even on days when I'm doing well. Each time it gets a little easier, even when my neuropathies progress, there are other setbacks or upsetting situations occur. At the beginning of this webinar, I said I have neuropathy and that my life is better for it. And genuinely, I found that it is. Neuropathy has allowed me to find gratitude in any situation. It allowed me to slow down, both for my own safety and to take in the world around me. I can validate my own emotions and struggles, find ways to adapt and overcome various challenges and restrictions, learn to find pride in myself, and define success by my own metrics. As we go into the question and answer segment, I want to give you two questions to ponder. The first is, how can I be grateful for neuropathy? If you weren't feeling ready to be grateful for neuropathy, that's okay. An easier question might be, how can I be grateful in spite of neuropathy? The second is, How has neuropathy given me perspective? You can take this as literal or in metaphorical or in a surface or as deep as you like.
Okay. So we'll see what kind of questions. Did you have any that you received already that you already had on a list of any?
I have one in the Q&A panel.
Okay.
So the first question we've got is, even after your presentation, I'm still unsure how to start. I'm having problems coping. So that is one of the most difficult parts, is that starting part, is where do you start and what's most important to focus on. For me, that was, in my case, finding a therapist, because that's the person who has the information to say, hey, maybe try a new specialty. Hey, maybe get a second opinion. Hey, there's these support groups that exist. So that would be my recommendation to you, and I can pull back up that that page for you real quick that has those other.
Mhm.
Let me go back to it. It has these resources here on the right side. So the American Psychological Association has some tips in this link, apa.org/topics/crisis.hotline or dash hotlines, about how to find therapists, how to find some other hotlines. Additionally, I love the Psychology Today's Find a Therapist tool. I think it's pretty easy, great place to start. You put in your zip code and what kind of therapy you're looking for, and start the adventure that way.
So
We've
another
got
question.
another question.
Yeah,
Go
another
ahead.
question that was, how has the support groups helped you?
Support groups have helped me in a lot of different ways. The first is knowing that I'm not alone. Um, I think when you're first finding out about neuropathy, especially with how few people seem to know about neuropathy, it feels pretty isolating. And then you have to use, mobility aids, or you have to figure out new ways to put on your socks, or feel temperature, or you have these new sensations, and it's just very isolating. So finding other people who get it kind of brought me back out of that shell, made me feel less alone. It let me learn new information. If there's a new treatment that exists that maybe I didn't know about, or that my doctors might not have known about, to look into and bring to them. That's a great, resource pool there. Um, Even just the topical over-the-counter treatments. I have learned so much about menthol and capsaicin, which is like the pepper-derived oils and all of those things, that I probably would not have learned if I hadn't been in these groups. So I would definitely recommend groups for that.
So the next one is, did you really have to find new friends?
Unfortunately, I did have to find some new friends, and I did have to no longer talk to some family even, because there are some people who just can't understand what they can't see. And unfortunately, neuropathy is often invisible until it's not. I am a younger person. I'm only 22. So a lot of people don't associate a young person with having it, which made it even more difficult. Um, just changed my life completely. But, I'm fortunate to have the friends who did stick around, who are very wonderful people. And I'm fortunate to have the new friends that I do, who accept me for who I am and where I'm at.
Yeah, because you actually answered the next one. It said, did you have a problem having your family understand your neuropathy symptoms? Which you just basically said, yeah, sometimes. So the next
Yeah.
question is, on the bad days, what do you do to get through the day, and do you prepare or cope ahead with for those days?
On the bad days, there are a variety of coping skills that I have kind of set aside as a plan, or like kind of like a cope ahead plan for those days. So it's things like, I have my DBT distress tolerance skills, and I have like my cold hat and things like that for like the pain side of things. But for the emotion side, it is those same skills. It's reaching out to my friends, it's calling my therapist if I need to, or using a crisis line. It's, taking putting on a film that makes me feel either happy or better, because sometimes it is a sad film that makes me feel better. Sometimes you need a good cry. and just really allowing myself to be where I'm at, feel where I'm at, and know that's okay to feel what I'm feeling.
Okay, so the next one is, are you using a wheelchair and how is that?
I am. So I am very fortunate that I got a custom wheelchair through Medicaid. It has made a lot of difference in my life. I'm someone who has a lot of autonomic nerve issues. So things like postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is a mouthful, or POTS, means I pass out a lot. That's allowed me now to go further distances, to, go grocery shopping and not be as tired after, to take a wheel around the park, those little things that you don't think of as tiring. All of a sudden, I have all this time that I didn't expect to have because I have a wheelchair now. Um, and it's also just a safety thing too, because I'm passing out. Hey, at least I'm already sitting now, so that makes it, a safety aspect too. I would not give my wheelchair for anything in the world. I love it.
So, and you mentioned perfection. I remember Jesus' instructions for use to be perfect as G'd, as God, I guess, is perfect. Obviously, we can't be perfect, but I learned that this really means to be mature or sufficient. How does that relate to PN or to peripheral neuropathy?
I think the phrase perfection is imperfection, and also learning, making those little bits of progress in each step are really what I've come to understand as perfection for PN. So, yes, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to drop things like 10 times probably. I am going to stumble and fall. I am going to have weakness, but I'm making those little steps forward. I'm continuing to make that progress for me, and so success isn't perfection anymore. And that's what I'm really striving away from, because that's a value that I was told that matters, but it doesn't actually matter to me.
Okay. How do you find a support, or how another person find out a support group in your area? So how do I?
There are there are a lot of ways to find support groups for neuropathy or for mental health. If it's neuropathy, the Western Neuropathy Association has some fantastic resources on their website. There's the Peripheral Neuropathy Support Network. There's also some other websites listed on the Foundation for Peripheral Neuropathies Foundation website. Um, in terms of mental health support groups, there are therapists will usually know. Your village town hall will often know where some are, as well as your local hospitals will typically have some.
Now, also, I'd like to point out that the Western Neuropathy Association has virtual support groups, which means you can live anywhere and still participate. Okay, the next one is, are you considering clinical trials?
In what manner? If you are meaning running them, I do not have the education or formal status to do so. If you're saying being a participant in them, that's something that I'm looking into, but each of us is a product of ourselves. What works for me may not work for you, so there's a lot to consider for myself.
Are you? I mean, you are so. It says funny, great attitude! Exclamation point. Which I think
I
your
appreciate
approach
that.
is really positive. Is I think what they're saying. Your approach is very positive. Next one, great presentation, Shana. Can you tell us about a bit about the hobbies you enjoy as you continue to embrace your life with neuropathy?
So they've definitely changed in what they look like. For example, there I am someone who does like to watch certain TV shows and movies, and I have to be careful about how much light goes on because I do have photosensitivity or light sensitivity. So it's being careful about how much of that I'm doing. If I'm going out and about, I still love to take walks around, play Pokemon Go if it gets me outside for a little bit longer. Um, so I do like to take walks in my wheelchair. I do like to exercise, weight lift if I can. Um, Still spend time just talking to friends, um, playing board games, card games, anything to get my mind going. I don't have a lot of that fine motor strength anymore, so no more FPS video games like my generation, but Still lots of fun to have.
Okay, next one is, I know you are a director of the Western Neuropathy Association. Has that helped your mental health or hurt it?
I think that it has helped it and challenged it. And the reason that I say that is I struggle to set boundaries, like I've said before. So I'm making sure that I'm pacing myself. That's something that I have a ton of difficulty doing. And that's where the challenge of it is there's so much that I can do and that I want to do, and making sure that I don't overcommit myself, because I don't have the same energy that I used to. Um, but in general, overall, it has benefited me greatly. I have found purpose. I have found something that gets me out of bed in the morning and says, you know what, I might not be able to, run 7 miles per hour for 5 miles, but I can make a difference in somebody's life. I can help somebody out, and that's everything to me.
So next is I think the pandemic killed in-person meetings. How can we recapture that support element through online networking?
So the great thing about the digital age is we have social media now. We have ways to connect with people. So whether it's online through the websites that we have, whether it's through Facebook, I know the Western Neuropathy Association has a Facebook, or if it's through email, if it's through the newsletters. I mean, there's so many ways to keep in touch nowadays. Even just, hey, meeting in a virtual meeting and saying, hey, I'd love to talk to you outside of group. Can we share emails or can we share phone numbers and just check in once in a while and see how each other's doing? That's originally how I got started in one of the very first groups I was ever in. Um, is exactly that. It's just, "Hey, how are you doing? It's been a week, what's new with you? How are your symptoms?" Anything that I can help you support you with, and that made a huge difference too, to then come back to those groups, have that emotional support to then focus on, "Okay, let's just focus on the neuropathy piece for a little bit."
Mhm. So one of the things that I'd like to mention in addition to what you just said is that we do still have a few in-person support groups. There's one in Monterey, California, and also one in Auburn, California. And I am sure that if you have a group of individuals who are dedicated to and willing to get together, that we will certainly be supportive of having an in-person, and anything that what the association can do to help, we would do. But I do understand that it's very difficult and very different today. So another question that came up was, how do you handle disparaging remarks or unkind comments when you're using your wheelchair? Again, people not understanding what they can't see. Do you try to respond? And if so, how? And I'm thinking of the lines at Disney.
So it depends, and I do a couple of different responses depending on what's going on. If someone is curious or maybe like unsure about what's going on, like a young kid has never seen a wheelchair before, or a young person in a wheelchair, because that's not the most common. Or if it's just, I've got a very odd wheelchair because mine is custom, there's a couple things that look a little different on it. So if it's that like curiosity, it's oh hey, do you have a question? I look to inform them about like it seems like you've clearly noticed my wheelchair. Maybe I can help enlighten what's going on. Um, However, there are some people who are just blatantly being rude. And so there's two ways I go with them. If they're doing the stare down from their car while I'm walking along the sidewalk, I will stare them down back. Is it the best thing? No. It makes me feel a little bit better because you know what? They should know that that's unkind and I'm returning that. Is that the best thing to do? No. Probably the best thing to do is to continue to roll away. And most of the time I do. But man, every once in a while, I admit I still fall victim to some of that. The other thing that I will do is I will explain like, "Oh, you can't see what's going on, but I actually have a systemic condition. I have a ton of pain, I have conditions that medications are not treating that pain. I fracture, bones more often. I sublux joints. This is not just from the neuropathy. I have other conditions." And when they realize, like, oh, we just can't see what's going on, there's a bunch wrong. It's the realization of, oh, whoops. So most of the time, that's the typical response. It's just that, hey, you just can't see what's going on. I'm really struggling. Or just ignoring it. That's the easiest route. Straight
Mhm.
up ignore them. Thankfully, I've been very lucky that the most I've gotten is those stares from people in cars who just have nothing better to do. Um, so far, no super rude comments, and only one child asking, "Why is she in a wheelchair?" so far. So, thankful and fortunate.
Yeah. Sometimes people in wheelchairs are allowed to go to the front of the line, and that might be what's related to the Disney comment. Um, and some people don't like that because they've been waiting in line a long time. So you ever had that kind of thing happen to you?
Usually not, and I think that's partially because I am not a thrill-seeking type, so there's not a lot of lines that I'm getting to the front of. The closest that's happened is actually the DMV. I can't always see very well on this side, and I didn't see a sign that said to wait at one spot, and got yelled at by a person who has a hearing impairment. And it's just the like, this is just okay. They're having a bad day. So just let them be and let someone else know, like, hey, please let this person know that, you can't always see what's going on because I can't see out of this side that well. So I didn't even see that sign. And, that's not fair to me. And that's all it had to be is, hey, they're not horrible persons, just one, slip up in how they're interacting with people. But
Mhm.
thankfully nothing major. Just the DMV.
Well, yeah, there's a comment in there by itself. So, how does faith help you in your neuropathy? And the comment also is prayers for you.
So I will preface this by saying I'm autistic, and the reason I preface this is autistic people typically go look at religion and faith a little bit differently than neurotypical people. That's the only reason I mention it this way. So for me, I do go to a non-denominational church off of a Christian subset of religions then. And that's great for finding a bunch of people who have that same mindset of caring and the same goals of, helping each other and loving each other. Um, there are actually people there who have similar conditions to me, some who have neuropathy, some who have those things. So it's in a way another support group of sorts. Additionally, um, there are things that are blatantly unfair sometimes. Like, I've got systemic neuropathy, including my face, and my face hurts pretty bad sometimes. Um, so sometimes there's nothing to do but say, you know what? I hope this is for some other better reason, and just have to leave it at that. I'm glad that it's not somebody else who has it. That's why I do
Mhm.
what I do, is to hopefully somebody else doesn't have it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, the next is a comment that, and it says there is still no support group in the San Fernando Valley. I enjoyed the one we had before the pandemic. And I'm going to comment on that if you don't mind.
Of
Again,
course.
I wish to encourage everyone to participate in the virtual support groups because there's multiple ones at multiple times. And I think the leaders of the support groups are doing a fabulous job and it's very inclusive. On the other hand, I know that person-to-person support groups were amazing and fantastic for people, particularly people who aren't necessarily interested in computer talking, to between each other. All I can actually say to that is try if you are interested and you can find some more folks that you can get together. The office, the Western Neuropathy Association office, will help you organize it to some degree. But we need a core of people that you can actually participate with, and we would really encourage it. Next comment is, did I get the question from, did you get the question from Erica? Didn't I or not? Let's see.
Did.
I thought I did.
Yeah, you did it. Uh-huh.
Um, all I can ask is, Catherine, if you think I didn't, let's tell me what it was again. We'll bring it back up. The one question I would like to ask is what you started out with. What makes you grateful for having neuropathy?
And that's back to what I ended with too, which is just I really can take the time to slow down. I mean, that is the thing that I've struggled with the most is just slowing down. Um, I did not mean to hit that spacebar button. Um, I struggled with accepting that, things look differently for me and I didn't understand why because I've had neuropathy for so long and just didn't know what it was. So there was a lot of accepting myself in that. And, yeah, I'm not at the same point that a lot of people my age are. Most of people my age are just now going to graduate college this year or are, entering internships or working, um, corporate sit down jobs, etc. And I'm doing nonprofit work for a group that I love because this is what fuels me. This is what success is to me. That in and of itself, I'm just grateful for that. To meet new people, to connect with people on a different level. I mean, there's no connecting like two people with an invisible illness. I mean, goodness. I started talking to a lady in Dollar Tree, of all places, for 20 minutes who didn't realize that, the numbness and tingles was neuropathy. That's exactly what it was, and gave her answers and that's freeing and that's privilege to me too. That I have this knowledge that I can give to other people and they have these stories that they're sharing with me that is great privilege.
Mhm. As we age and as we find a lot of different problems relating to neuropathy that come up at different stages of life, we are finding that peripheral neuropathy is a huge unknown to the vast majority of people. One of the things we would love to have is some more celebrity support for this to make it much more, wide open in terms of understanding and acceptance. And it's an uphill battle because it is something that a lot of times you don't see the symptoms of when you're with other people, and people just don't even realize it. It's just that simple. And of course, now you have a little bit different kind of symptoms, so it's a little different. But many people who have, it's just sort of a baseline or a little more acute. Um, I mean, like myself, for example, I have peripheral neuropathy for 10, 15 years, but nobody really knows it unless I tell them. So I understand how it can be very difficult. Anybody have any other questions? Let's see, I think we've got everything covered. Any last comment that you wanted to say, Shauna?
Just reach out for support. If you guys are struggling with your mental health with neuropathy, please don't be afraid to find a therapist, talk to, a friend, come to one of our support groups here at the Western Neuropathy Association. We're a lot of fun. Just don't be afraid to reach out and know that you aren't alone. There are other people who are struggling and who understand what it's like to deal with these similar problems.
Mm-hmm. Again, I want to say thank you very much for sharing your story and the struggles you've gone through. And of course, we all wish you the very best besides. Thank everyone for participating. Let's see, there might be another question. Let's see. Here's another one. Also, the medical profession has not and does not know what to do when it comes to, well, it is a comment, but it is very true. And so, Tammy, you're absolutely right. A lot of
And
times.
Tammy, that's one of the reasons that, we are also saying, hey, if you have neuropathy, make sure that, you tell somebody because nobody seems to know about neuropathy, despite, one in roughly 15 people getting neuropathy some point in their lifetime. And we don't know what this word means yet. The medical profession doesn't. So great idea to inform your physicians too. In fact, and I'm gonna grab one real quick. I'm so sorry, but we have these fantastic peripheral neuropathy cards that are great to just explain how neuropathy works, the treatments, the tests. I mean, there are over 200 causes. So it's kind of difficult to understand a condition that has 200 causes.
Yeah.
But that's why we're all here. Hopefully they learn and we can keep funding and researching and find a cure.
Mhm. Okay. Again, thank you very much. And I think that that we should just about do it for today. And again, just to let everybody know that this has been recorded and will be on our YouTube channel in about a week. So if you haven't, or you have somebody you want to show it to, or look at it again, then you'll know what to do. Okay, thank you again and have a great day. Bye-bye.